John Mason never expected that his 25th birthday would change his life forever. The young engineer had been working for the space program for only 3 years when his team captured an unusual signal from deep space. When he arrived at the lab that morning, his supervisor Kathy pulled him aside with an excited look on her face. "We need you in the special containment area now," she whispered. "Something arrived for you specifically." John followed her through several security checkpoints, each requiring more clearance than the last. Finally, they entered a room where 5 senior scientists stood around a glowing blue container. "Happy birthday, John," said Dr. Bell, the head of xenobiology. "The Zoraxians sent you a gift humanity had established. First contact with the Zoraxians 2 years ago. The tall, graceful aliens with their silvery skin and multifaceted eyes had seemed peaceful enough, but kept their distance. They communicated primarily through mathematical equations and shared some basic technology but remained mysterious." John approached the container cautiously. As he got closer, the top dissolved into mist, revealing a sleeping figure inside. She looked almost human except for the faint blue glow of her skin and the delicate patterns that swirled across her face. Her hair flowed like liquid silver, and when she opened her eyes, they shimmered with all the colors of a nebula. "This is Alara," Dr. Bell explained. "According to the message, she is a companion specifically engineered to be compatible with human biology and psychology. She was sent for you." Alara sat up smoothly and looked directly at John. Her lips curved into a smile that made his heart race. "Hello, John Mason," she said, her voice musical and strange. "I have traveled far to meet you." The scientists bombarded him with questions and warnings, but John could barely hear them over the pounding of his blood in his ears. Why would the Zoraxians send him an alien woman as a gift? Was she a spy? A peace offering? Something else entirely? In the following days, John learned that Alara was far more than she appeared. The Zoraxians had indeed created her as a hybrid between their species and humans, but not as a pet or prize. She was an ambassador with vast knowledge of the universe. "My people believe you have potential," she told him one evening as they sat in his apartment under observation cameras. "But they fear your aggressive tendencies. They sent me to understand you better by giving you to me like some kind of present," John said, unable to hide his discomfort with the situation. Alara laughed a sound like wind chimes. "No, John. You misunderstand. In my culture, to be given as a gift is the highest honor. It means I am trusted to represent my entire civilization. It means I have value beyond measure." John struggled with this concept. In human terms, receiving a sentient being as a gift seemed wrong. Yet Alara insisted she had volunteered for this role. She explained that her people valued emotional experiences above all else, and that she was their foremost expert in understanding other species. The government assigned a small apartment for them within the research facility. John would work during the day while Alara studied human culture through books, films, and the internet. Each evening they would talk for hours, sometimes joined by Kathy, who had become Alara's friend. "Your art fascinates me," Alara said one night while they watched an old movie. "You create stories about things that never happen to express truths about your real lives. My people only record what actually exists." "Does that mean you don't have fiction?" John asked, surprised. "We have mathematical projections of possible events, but we do not imagine impossible things for pleasure," she explained. "This concept of willing suspension of disbelief is new to me." As the days passed, John found himself looking forward to their evenings together. Alara asked questions no human would think to ask, making him see his own world through new eyes. "Why do humans keep plants inside their homes when plants grow naturally outside?" she wondered. "Why do you watch sad stories that make you cry when you avoid sadness in real life? Why do you keep pets that serve no practical purpose but consume resources?" Each question forced John to examine aspects of humanity he had never considered. He began to understand his own species better through her outsider perspective. Meanwhile, the scientific team studied everything Alara shared. The mathematical formulas she provided revolutionized their understanding of space travel. Her knowledge of astronomy proved more accurate than their most advanced telescopes. Her insights into physics suggested new energy sources that could solve Earth's environmental problems. But not everyone welcomed her presence. General Wright from military intelligence suspected her of gathering information for an invasion. Dr. Monroe wanted to study her biology more invasively. Both pressed for greater restrictions on her freedom. We cannot trust what we cannot fully understand, General Wright argued during a security meeting. For all we know, she could be transmitting everything she learns back to her people. She is, Kathy pointed out. She told us that from the beginning she shares our culture with them, just as she shares theirs with us. That's the whole point of an exchange. John found himself becoming protective of Ilara. When security protocols were tightened, he fought for her right to access the facility gardens. Where once he might have shared the general's suspicions, now he saw only a curious being trying to bridge the gap between two very different civilizations. 1 month after her arrival, Ilara asked to visit places beyond the research facility. The request went all the way to the president, who eventually approved limited excursions with heavy security. Their first trip was to a nearby forest. Ilara stood among the trees, her skin glowing slightly in the dappled sunlight. She touched the rough bark with wonder. On my world, plants communicate constantly through electrical signals. She explained, your trees are so quiet by comparison, yet they have their own beauty. John watched her exploring, feeling a strange mix of emotions. He had begun to care for her, not as a curiosity or even as a friend, but as something more. Yet what future could there be for a human and a being engineered by aliens? That night, as they returned to the facility, Ilara sensed his confusion. Your thoughts are troubled, she said softly. Your heart rate increases when I am near, yet you grow distant in your mind. Why? John hesitated, unsure how to explain human romantic feelings to someone who might not experience emotion the same way. I think I am developing feelings for you, he finally admitted. The kind humans usually have for other humans. It makes things complicated. Ilara studied him, her nebula eyes unreadable. Complicated is not bad, she said at last. Complicated means there is depth. It means there is more to discover. Before John could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Red lights flashed and security personnel rushed past them. Unidentified objects entering Earth's atmosphere, announced a voice. Over the speakers, all personnel to emergency stations. Ilara looked up, her expression suddenly alert. They are coming. She whispered, Who, your people? John asked, feeling a surge of fear. What if the generals had been right all along? What if this had been preparation for invasion? Not just any of my people, Ilara explained as they hurried toward the command center. The Evaluation Council. They judge whether new species are ready for deeper contact. In the command center, chaos reigned. Radar showed 7 large objects descending through the atmosphere. Military jets had been scrambled but held position at a distance. General Wright spotted them and strode over, his face tight with anger. Did you know about this? He demanded of Ilara. Is this why you've been here, preparing us for them? I am the preparation, she said calmly. My presence here, my experiences with John, with all of you, that was the first stage of evaluation. Now comes the second. Dr. Bell joined them, looking both frightened and excited. The objects have changed course. They're heading directly for us. On the large monitors, they watched as 7 shimmering vessels like giant teardrops slowed their descent and hovered above the research facility. The largest one began to lower itself toward the landing pad. John felt Ilara take his hand. Her skin was warmer than usual, almost hot to the touch. What happens now? He asked. Now, she said, her voice both sad and hopeful. Now we find out if your people and mine can truly understand each other. Everything depends on what happens in the next few hours. The largest ship landed gracefully on the pad, its surface rippling like water in the moonlight. A seam appeared in its side, widening into an entrance. They want to meet you, Ilara told John. You specifically. Me, why? Because you were chosen from the beginning, it was always about you, John Mason. The human who could understand. Inside the Zoraxian ship, everything glowed with soft blue light. The walls curved organically with no sharp angles or straight lines. The floor felt slightly springy beneath their feet and seemed to respond to their weight, adjusting to provide perfect support. The ship is partially alive, Alara explained, seeing their wonder. Grown rather than built. A symbiosis of technology and biology. Dr. Bell immediately took out her instruments, scanning everything in sight. The cellular structure is unlike anything we've ever seen, she murmured. Not quite plant, not quite animal. Something else entirely. Nexar appeared before them, seeming to materialize from the walls themselves. Your curiosity is noted, the alien said. Questions will be answered in time. First, comfort must be established. The Zoraxian led them through corridors that widened and narrowed in rhythm like blood vessels pulsing. They passed chambers where other aliens worked with floating displays of light, their fingers moving through complex patterns in the air. Finally, they reached a larger space with several raised platforms that resembled beds and a central area with cushioned surfaces that might serve as chairs. Your habitation, Nexar announced, designed for human physiology based on Alaris research, modified for comfort. Rest, adjust. We will return when you are prepared for dialogue. With that, the alien seemed to melt into the wall, leaving the humans alone with Alara. Did he just walk through the wall? Kathy asked. Stunned, Alara smiled. Zoraxians can alter their molecular density. It is a natural ability evolved on our homeworld, where shifting terrain made solid forms disadvantageous. Fascinating. Dr. Bell was already taking notes. That would explain the fluid movement patterns. John sat on one of the cushioned surfaces, surprised at how it molded perfectly to his body. How long will we be here, he asked. Time is measured differently by my people, Ilara replied. But approximately 3 of your days for the initial exchange. Then decisions will be made about further interaction. The humans spent the next hour exploring their quarters, discovering that the walls could become transparent at a touch, revealing the earth below them. They were in orbit, John realized with a start, a view that only a handful of humans had ever seen. Food was provided, strange fruits and what looked like blue bread with the consistency of cake. It tasted better than it looked, rich and satisfying. Kathy took samples for later analysis, though. Alara assured them it had been specially formulated to be compatible with human digestion. After they had settled, Nexar returned this time, accompanied by 5 other Zoraxians. Each had slightly different pattern configurations on their skin, which John realized might be how they distinguished individuals. The exchange begins, Nexar announced. Questions will be asked and answered. Knowledge will be shared. Evaluations will continue. What followed was the most extraordinary conversation of John's life. The Zoraxians asked about everything from human emotional responses to technological development. They seemed particularly interested in art, music, and literature concepts that were apparently foreign to their experience. Your species creates fictional scenarios to explore emotional states. One Zoraxian named Mira observed, "This is unique among known intelligent species. Why do you need untrue stories to understand truth? Fiction helps us explore possibilities." John tried to explain. It lets us experience things we might never encounter in real life. It builds empathy by letting us see through other perspectives. Empathy. Nexar repeated the word carefully. This concept requires further study. In turn, the humans asked about Zoraxian society, technology, and biology. They learned that the aliens had evolved on a world with constant environmental flux, which had led to their adaptable physiology. Their society was built around collective consciousness, but with strong emphasis on individual experience. We share all sensory input, Alara explained. When one Zoraxian learns, all potentially learn, but each must process experience individually. This balance maintains both unity and growth. Dr. Bell was fascinated by their biology, Kathy by their social structures. But John found himself drawn to understanding their values, their perspective on existence. Your people don't seem to have war or conflict, he noted. How is that possible? Conflict exists. Nexar corrected. But not physical violence, resource allocation, goal variance method disputes. These create tension. Resolution comes through experience sharing. When all perspectives are truly understood, optimal solutions emerge naturally. That wouldn't work for humans. Kathy said, we can't share experiences directly. This limitation shapes your development. Another Zoraxian commented, creates both strength and weakness. You must use imprecise language to convey complex experience. This leads to misunderstanding, yet also to your art, your creativity, your unique perspective. As the exchange continued, John began to understand why the Zoraxians had sent Alara, why they were so cautious about deeper contact with humanity. The gulf between their ways of thinking was vast. Yet there was also genuine curiosity on both sides, a desire to bridge that gulf. On the second day, they were taken on a tour of the ship. John marveled at the technology, though much of it defied human understanding. The Zoraxians used energy in ways that seemed almost magical, manipulating gravity, light, and even time itself. Their medical facilities could cure diseases humans considered fatal. Their navigation systems mapped the cosmos with precision that made Earth astronomy look primitive. Your species could benefit from this knowledge, Vela told them. But weapons would be made, information misused, power concentrated. This has happened with other species. Before sharing, we must be certain of what? John asked. That benefits outweigh risks, that humanity will grow, not destroy, that the gift will not become a curse. That evening, as they processed everything they had seen, Dr. Bell was ecstatic. Their medical technology alone could save millions of lives, she said, and their energy systems could solve our environmental crisis overnight. Assuming they share it, Kathy pointed out, and assuming we can understand it. Their science operates on principles we haven't even discovered yet. John had been quiet, thinking about everything they had learned. He turned to Alara, who had been watching him closely. This was always the real purpose, wasn't it? He asked. Not just cultural exchange, but evaluating whether humanity can be trusted with advanced knowledge. She nodded. My people have encountered many species. Some used shared knowledge wisely. Others turned it to destruction. Some even destroyed themselves. We must be careful. And what have you decided about us? John asked. About me, I have shared my experiences, she said. But I am not the only evaluator. The council must reach consensus. On the third day, they were brought to a chamber unlike any other on the ship, a vast dome with what looked like stars swirling overhead. Nexar and the full council of 12 Zoraxians waited in a circle. The time of decision approaches. Nexar announced, final questions remain. The questions that followed were different, more philosophical, more challenging. If given technology to extend human life indefinitely, how would your society change? If given the ability to alter your own genetic code, what limits would you impose? If shown that some of your fundamental scientific assumptions were incorrect, how would your species respond? John, Kathy, and Dr. Bell answered as honestly as they could, acknowledging human flaws but also highlighting humanity's capacity for growth and adaptation. Finally, Nexar posed the last question, directed specifically at John. If your species and ours cannot reach full understanding, if differences remain too great, what path should be taken? John considered, carefully, sensing the importance of his answer. Understanding doesn't have to be complete to be valuable, he said finally. Our differences might be exactly why we should maintain contact. We can learn from each other precisely because we see the universe differently. Complete understanding might not be possible or even desirable, but respect, dialogue, and a willingness to learn, those are possible and valuable. The Zoraxians' patterns swirled rapidly as they communicated silently among themselves. The intensity of the light in the chamber increased until it was almost blinding. Then suddenly it dimmed. The evaluation is complete. Nexar announced, The decision is made. John held his breath, feeling the weight of the moment. He looked at Alara, who stood with the other Zoraxians, her expression unreadable. Humanity is deemed worthy of limited contact. Controlled knowledge exchange will begin. Diplomatic protocols will be established. Relief flooded through John. He heard Dr. Bell gasp and Kathy let out a small cheer. However, Nexar continued, full integration into the galactic community requires further development. Further evaluation will continue through designated channels. What does that mean exactly? Dr. Bell asked. It means, Ilara explained, stepping forward, that I will remain on Earth as primary contact. Others will join me in time. A Zoraxian embassy will be established. Knowledge will be shared gradually as your species demonstrates readiness. And John Mason, Nexar added, will serve as human ambassador to Zoraxia when preparations are complete. John stared in shock. Me, an ambassador? I don't have any diplomatic training. Conventional diplomatic training is irrelevant. Nexar stated, you possess qualities of greater value, curiosity without aggression, questions without judgment, emotion balanced with reason. These are the qualities needed. The implications began to sink in. John looked at Alara, wondering if she had known this would happen. Her slight smile told him she had at least suspected. John stood frozen as three tall figures emerged from the ship. Their bodies glowed with the same blue light as Alara's, but more intensely. They moved with fluid grace, their long limbs seeming to flow rather than bend. They wore no clothes, but their bodies were covered in swirling patterns that shifted and changed like living tattoos. The tallest one stopped a few feet away from the humans, its head turned, slowly surveying the gathered scientists, soldiers, and government officials. Then its gaze fixed on John. You did not imprison her. The alien said, its voice somehow inside John's mind rather than heard with his ears. This was unexpected. General Wright stepped forward, hand hovering near his sidearm. We treated her as an honored guest, as diplomatic protocol requires, he said stiffly. The alien tilted its head. Truth is partial. It said, you wished to contain, study, dissect, but you were prevented. Others showed different intentions. Ilara moved to stand between John and the aliens. This is Nexar, she explained, the lead evaluator of the Zoraxian Council. With them are Vela and Lyra, specialists in human biology and psychology. Nexar continued to study John. We have observed through Ilara's experiences. Your species is contradictory. You create beauty and destruction in equal measure. You speak of peace while preparing for war. You claim to value all life, yet exploit your own world. You are paradox. Dr. Bell stepped forward cautiously. We are young as a spacefaring species, she offered. We are still learning to overcome our more primitive instincts. Yes, agreed Nexar. Young, dangerous, fascinating. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut. John realized that this moment, whatever was happening, might determine the future relationship between humans and Zoraxians. He took a deep breath and stepped forward. Why me? He asked. Out of everyone on Earth, why send Ilara to me specifically? The three Zoraxians looked at each other, their patterns swirling faster for a moment. Then Nexar answered, your signal. What signal? 3 years ago, you sent a message into space, a mathematical sequence with embedded emotional patterns. It reached our monitoring station. John remembered the project had been his first assignment at the space program, a signal designed to carry both logical information and artistic expression, a combination of mathematics, music, and visual patterns transmitted toward a cluster of stars where they suspected intelligent life might exist. That was you, he said in wonder. You received my message. We receive many messages from many species, Nexar said. Yours was different. It contained not just information but feeling, not just data, but beauty. We needed to understand how a species capable of such destruction could also create such harmony. Vela, the smaller alien, moved forward. We studied your species from afar. Your broadcasts, your probes, your conflicts, your achievements. We identified you, John Mason, as the creator of the signal, a suitable subject for the first direct contact. I wasn't ready, John said, feeling overwhelmed. I'm not special. I'm just an engineer. Not special, Lyra, the third alien, commented. Yet you accepted Ilara as a person, not a specimen. You questioned but did not fear. You learned but did not exploit. This is why you were chosen. Kathy, who had been silent until now, spoke up. What happens now? What do you want from us? Nexar turned to address everyone present. We came to evaluate whether humanity is ready for greater knowledge, whether you pose a threat to the galactic community. And what have you decided? General Wright asked, his voice tense. We have not yet decided. Nexar replied, the evaluation continues. The alien turned back to John. You will come with us. A murmur of protest rose from the humans. General Wright stepped forward. Absolutely not. We cannot allow a citizen to be taken off-world without proper protocols, agreements, guarantees. Not taken. Nexar clarified. Invited, as Ilara. Was invited to your world, you may decline. John looked at Ilara, her nebula eyes watching him intently. He understood now. She had been evaluating him all along, and through him all of humanity. Where would we go? He asked. For how long? To our vessel. Nexar answered, to continue dialogue, to share knowledge. The time is variable. This is a matter of national security. The general insisted. Mason is a government employee with access to classified information. He cannot simply leave with alien visitors. I understand your concern, Nexar said, but the invitation is not to your government. It is to John Mason. Individual choice is important to our evaluation. John felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. If he refused, what opportunities might humanity lose? If he went, what dangers might he face? He looked around at the faces watching him, some eager, some fearful, some calculating. Can others come too? He asked, Dr. Bell Kathy. They understand your people better than most humans. That way, Zoraxians conferred silently, their patterns swirling in complex interactions. Finally, Nexar nodded. Acceptable. The small group will reduce fear, increase understanding. I need to discuss this with my colleagues, John said. Can you give us some time? Time is granted. Nexar agreed. We will return to our vessel. You may signal when ready. The three aliens turned and moved back toward their ship with the same fluid grace. Their forms seemed to shimmer and blur at the edges as though they weren't entirely solid. Once they had gone, the humans erupted in argument. This is the opportunity of a lifetime. Dr. Bell exclaimed. Direct access to their technology, their knowledge. It's also potentially walking into a trap, countered General Wright. We know almost nothing about their true intentions. Ilara has been with us for a month, Kathy pointed out. They could have done anything during that time if they meant harm. John turned to Ilara, who had been silent during the exchange. What do you think? He asked. What's really happening here? She looked at him, her expression serious. My people do not think as yours do. They do not plan conquests or seek dominance. They seek understanding, harmony, balance, but they also protect themselves from potential threats. Your species, with its nuclear weapons, its history of violence, its rapid technological development, is seen as potentially dangerous. That is why the evaluation is necessary. And if we fail this evaluation? John asked. What? Then isolation, she said simply. No further contact, no shared knowledge, no access to the wider community of intelligent species. The implications of her words sank in. This wasn't just about John or even about scientific discovery, it was about humanity's future among the stars. The group debated for hours, General Wright arguing for caution, Dr. Bell for scientific opportunity. Various government officials called, weighing in with their own agendas. Some wanted to demand technology exchanges. Others wanted military guarantees. One even suggested trying to capture a Zoraxian ship through it all. John remained quiet, thinking he had spent a month with Ilara learning about her people while she learned about his. He had seen her wonder at simple things like rainfall and birdsong. He had watched her study human art with fascination. He had felt the genuine curiosity behind her questions. Finally, when the arguments had gone in circles long enough, he spoke. Going. He said firmly, with or without official approval, I'm accepting their invitation. You can't make that decision alone. General Wright protested. The implications are too vast. Actually, I can, John replied. As they pointed out, the invitation was to me personally, not to our government, and I choose to accept? Dr. Bell smiled. I'm going to. This is why I became a xenobiologist. Count me in, Kathy added. Someone needs to keep you two out of trouble. The general looked like he wanted to object further, but a call from Washington silenced him. After a tense conversation, he put down the phone, his expression sour. The president has authorized the visit, he said grudgingly. But with conditions: you will wear tracking devices. You will maintain regular communication. You will share all scientific discoveries with our team, and you will return at the first sign of danger. John nodded in agreement, though he wondered how enforceable such conditions would be on an alien vessel. They were given 2 hours to prepare. Kathy and Dr. Bell rushed to gather research equipment and personal items. John went to his quarters to pack a small bag. He chose practical clothes, basic toiletries, and as an afterthought, a small wooden carving his grandfather had made. A falcon. In flight when he returned to the meeting point, Ilara was waiting. Her expression was unreadable. Are you afraid? She asked. Yes, he admitted, but also excited. Fear is wise when facing the unknown, she said. But your courage is why you were chosen. The eye. 3 humans underwent final briefings, received their tracking devices and communication equipment, and said their goodbyes to colleagues. Then, Ilara led them to the landing pad, where the Zoraxian ship waited. The surface of the vessel rippled as they approached, creating an opening. John took a deep breath and stepped through into another world. The return to Earth created more chaos than John had anticipated. The moment their small group stepped off the Zoraxian vessel, they were surrounded by military personnel, government officials, and eager scientists, all demanding immediate reports. General Wright pushed through the crowd, his face tight with concern. What happened up there? He demanded. We lost communication with your trackers after the first 6 hours. Their ship has some kind of interference field, Dr. Bell explained, but we're fine. Better than fine. Actually, we're making history. The debriefing lasted nearly 18 hours, each of them questioned separately, then together. Their medical examinations were even more thorough than before the visit, as doctors searched for any alien influence or contamination. Through it all, Ilara remained calm, answering questions with patience even as some officials treated her with obvious suspicion. She explained the council's decision, the planned embassy, the gradual sharing of knowledge. But when asked about specific technologies, she remained deliberately vague. Some knowledge must be earned, she said simply. This is the way of balance. A week after their return, the president herself arrived at the facility. The entire compound was locked down, security increased to unprecedented levels. The meeting took place in the largest conference room, Ilara and John seated on one side of the table, the president and her advisors on the other. Kathy and Dr. Bell were present as scientific. Liaison General Wright and his security team stood along the walls. Let me be direct. The president began. Your people have technology far beyond ours, technology that could change the balance of power on our world. What guarantees do we have that you won't share it selectively, creating new inequalities? New conflicts, Ilara nodded, acknowledging the concern. This question demonstrates wisdom, she said. Knowledge shared unwisely becomes a weapon, not a tool. The Zoraxian approach is gradual. Universal beneficial knowledge like medical advances, environmental restoration will be shared with all nations. Simultaneously, military applications will be withheld until your species demonstrates readiness. And who judges this readiness? Asked. The Secretary of Defense, your council. Joint evaluation. Ilara replied. Both Zoraxian and human representatives must agree. Each step must be consensus. The president leaned forward. And you propose that John Mason, a junior engineer with no diplomatic Experience should be humanity's representative in these decisions. John felt himself flush, but before he could respond, Alara spoke. John Mason created the signal that first drew our attention. His mind bridges scientific understanding and emotional wisdom. He questions without fear, learns without prejudice. These qualities are rare and valuable. With all due respect, John interjected, I agree. I'm not qualified for this role. I'm willing to help with the transition, but surely there are better candidates for a permanent ambassador. The president studied him thoughtfully. False modesty or genuine humility, she mused. Either way, refreshing in this room. She turned back to Alara. Your council has made their choice. We will respect it for now, but we request additional human representatives as the embassy develops. Acceptable. Alara agreed. Diversity of perspective benefits all. The negotiations continued for hours, discussing the location of the future embassy security protocols, communication channels. The Zoraxians offered to share initial technologies in 3 areas. Medical research focused on cancer treatment energy generation, using principles similar to their ships, and environmental restoration techniques. As the meeting concluded, the president took John aside. Whatever they saw in you, I hope it's real, she said quietly, because you're now responsible for the most important diplomatic relationship in human history. No pressure. John smiled weakly. None at all, and the weeks that followed, life became a whirlwind. The announcement of official contact with the Zoraxians sent shockwaves through human society. Some greeted the news with excitement, others with fear. Religious leaders debated the theological implications. Scientists clamored for access to alien knowledge. Military strategists worried about security implications. Through it all, John found himself thrust into the spotlight. Interviews, briefings, meetings. His face appeared on news broadcasts worldwide. Always alongside Alara. They became symbols of the new relationship between species. The personal strain was immense. John barely slept, working constantly to understand the complexities of his new role. He studied international relations, diplomatic protocols, and Zoraxian culture. His apartment within the facility became little more than a place to occasionally crash for a few hours. Alara noticed his exhaustion. Humans require regular rest, she observed one evening, finding him still working. At 3 a.m, your effectiveness decreases without it. There's too much to learn, John said, rubbing his eyes. I don't want to make a mistake that costs humanity this opportunity. That fear will cause precisely what you hope to avoid, she said gently, taking the tablet from his hands. Rest now, learning continues tomorrow. As John finally allowed himself to relax, he realized how much he had come to depend on Alara's guidance, her calm presence, her wisdom, her understanding of both worlds. She had become more than an alien ambassador. She had become his friend, perhaps his closest friend. The construction of the Zoraxian embassy began on neutral territory, an artificial island in international waters. The structure grew organically, like the ship, using the same living technology. Within 2 months, it stood complete, a breathtaking structure of curves and light that seemed to change depending on the angle from which it was viewed. The day before the official opening, John stood on the observation deck watching the sunset reflect off the embassy's surface. Alara joined him silently. Tomorrow, everything changes, he said, for real this time. Change is constant, she replied. But yes, this marks a significant transition. John turned to face her. There's something I've been wanting to ask you. Something personal. She tilted her head curiously. Ask. When you're with your people, you communicate directly, sharing experiences, feelings. But with me, with all humans, you're limited to words. How does that feel for you personally? Alara considered the question, her nebula eyes reflecting the fading sunlight. Imagine living in a room with many windows, each showing a different view of the same landscape. Together they form a complete picture. Now imagine all windows but one are covered. You see only a fragment of the whole. There is beauty in that fragment, but also limitation. She paused. This is communication with humans. It is both beautiful and limited. Do you miss it, the full communication with your own kind? Yes, she admitted. But there is also wonder in this new form of sharing. Ideas must be shaped into words, experiences translated into stories. The effort creates new understanding. Sometimes limitation becomes its own kind of gift. John nodded, understanding better now why the Zoraxians found human art so fascinating. It emerged from the very limitations they experienced. "I'm afraid I won't be good enough for this role," he confessed. "That'll let everyone down." "Fear is natural," she said, "but remember why you were chosen. Not for perfection, but for growth. Not for certainty, but for wonder. You question, you learn, you adapt. These are the qualities needed." The opening ceremony the next day brought together leaders from around the world. Security was unprecedented. Crowds gathered beyond the perimeters and billions watched via broadcast. 3 Zoraxian ships hovered above the embassy, their hulls shimmering in the sunlight. Nexar and the council arrived. In ceremonial formation, their patterns more elaborate than John had seen before. As the human ambassador, John stood alongside the president and other world leaders. As Nexar approached, the patterns on the alien's skin shifted, forming what looked like a representation of Earth and Zoraxia, orbiting a central star. Today marks the beginning. Nexar announced the words broadcast in all major human languages. Not an end to separation, but a beginning of understanding. 2 species, different in form and thought and experience, yet both seeking knowledge, both valuing growth, both capable of wonder. The alien turned to John. "John Mason, will you accept the responsibility of bridge between worlds? Will you serve as voice for humanity in the great exchange?" John stepped forward, feeling the weight of countless eyes upon him. Yet in that moment his fear had vanished, replaced by a sense of purpose. "I accept this responsibility," he said, his voice steady. "Not alone, but with the wisdom of both. Our peoples to guide me. Together, we will build understanding. Together, we will grow." Nexar raised a hand and a sphere of light formed above the embassy, growing brighter until it burst in a shower of luminescent particles that drifted down over the gathered crowd. Each particle, where it touched, changed color, responding uniquely to each person. "The embassy is now open," Nexar declared. "The exchange begins." As the ceremony continued, John found himself standing next to Ilara. Her skin glowed. With inner light, her expression one of quiet joy. "This is just the beginning, isn't it?" he said softly. She smiled, that mysterious smile that had first captivated him. "Always beginnings," she agreed. "The universe is made of them." 1 year after the opening of the Zoraxian embassy, the changes on Earth were subtle but profound. The first wave of shared medical technology had begun to transform treatment for several previously incurable diseases. The energy systems installed in 3 test cities had reduced pollution dramatically while providing abundant clean power. Environmental restoration projects had revitalized damaged ecosystems at an astonishing rate. Yet for all these advances, the cultural exchange proved even more significant. Zoraxian philosophy, art, and science challenged human assumptions, sparking new directions in human thought. Human creativity, emotion, and adaptability fascinated the Zoraxians, leading to innovations in their own society. For John, the year had been both rewarding and exhausting. His role as ambassador kept him constantly moving between the embassy, human governments, and research facilities. He had learned more in 12 months than in his entire previous life. His understanding of both species had deepened, along with his appreciation for the delicate balance being maintained. Today marked an important milestone. The first anniversary of formal contact. A celebration was planned at the embassy, with representatives from both species. John arrived early, reviewing final arrangements with Ilara, who had become his closest advisor and friend. "The council is pleased with progress," she told him as they walked through the living gardens that surrounded the embassy. "Particularly, with the artistic exchange, human music has created new forms of Zoraxian expression. Our mathematical models have inspired your scientists. The blending benefits both. John nodded, watching the living plants respond to their presence, shifting to create easier paths. The medical advances alone have saved thousands of lives already. But I'm more excited about the philosophical exchange, the new schools of thought emerging from the dialogue. Elara smiled, her nebula eyes shimmering. This was always the true gift. Knowledge can be given, but understanding must be earned. Together, both species understand more than either could alone. The celebration brought together scientists, artists, leaders from both worlds. In the main chamber of the embassy, a new form of art was unveiled. A collaborative creation where human music and poetry combined with Zoraxian light patterns and mathematical structures. The result was breathtaking, a multisensory experience that spoke to both species in their own languages while creating something entirely new. As the event continued, John found himself approached by Nexar. The lead evaluator had become a more frequent visitor to Earth in recent months. John Mason. A moment of private dialogue is requested. John followed the Zoraxian to a quieter chamber where the walls shifted to provide privacy. The council has reached decision, Nexar stated without preamble. The next phase may begin. What next phase? John asked. Travel. John Mason. True. Exchange. Not just knowledge and art, but experience. You have been selected as the first human to visit Zoraxia. John stared in shock. Your homeworld. You want me to go to your actual planet? Yes. The journey is long by your standards. 3 months. In our vessels, then 1 year on Zoraxia, learning, experiencing, sharing, then return to build deeper understanding. The implications were staggering. No human had traveled beyond the solar system. The scientific value alone would be immeasurable, but it meant leaving Earth for over a year. This is why I was chosen from the beginning, wasn't it? John realized. Not just for the embassy, but for this. Your signal showed capacity for wonder, for adaptation, for growth. These qualities are necessary for what comes next. Nexar confirmed, but choice remains yours. The journey involves risk. Unknown factors exist. Cannot guarantee safe return. I need time to think about this, John said, his mind racing. Time is granted. Nexar agreed. 1 month standard. Decision must then be made. Others prepare for your possible arrival. When Nexar left, John remained in the chamber trying to process everything. The opportunity was incredible beyond anything he had ever imagined. But the risks were equally significant. No human had ever ventured so far from Earth. No guarantee of return. He sought out Elara, finding her in the gardens. Nexar told me about Zoraxia, he said. About the invitation. She nodded. I suspected this would come soon. Your work here has proven the wisdom of your selection. Did you know this was always the plan? Not with certainty, she replied, but with hope. Yes, I hoped you would be the first. John paced the garden path. It's an incredible opportunity, but terrifying too. What if I can't adapt? What if something goes wrong? What if I never make it back? All journeys contain risk, Elara said softly. When I came to Earth, I faced similar fears. Different atmosphere, different biology, different minds. I could not know if I would survive, yet the journey itself held value regardless of outcome. What would you do if you were me, he asked. I am not you, she reminded him. But I believe you already know your answer. You have always been drawn to the unknown, always seeking what lies, beyond always questioning. The only true question is what you fear more, going or not going. John realized she was right. The fear of missing this opportunity, of never knowing what lay beyond, far outweighed the fear of the journey itself. In the weeks that followed, John prepared for the possibility of interstellar travel. He underwent extensive medical evaluations, physical training, and psychological assessments. The government insisted on numerous briefings about what information he should gather, what questions he should ask. You'll be representing our entire species, the president reminded him during their final meeting. Everything you do, everything you say will shape how they view humanity. I understand the responsibility, John assured her, but I also understand that I'm being sent for who I am, not as a perfect representative I'm going to learn to experience to understand. 2 days before the scheduled departure date, John visited his childhood home one last time. His parents had struggled to comprehend the path their son had taken from junior engineer to alien ambassador. Now he was about to become the first human to leave the solar system. "We're proud of you," his father said simply as they stood in the backyard looking up at the stars, scared out of our minds but proud. His mother hugged him tightly. "Just come back to us, that's all we ask." The morning of departure arrived clear and bright. The Zoraxian vessel waited at the embassy landing pad, gleaming in the sunlight. A small crowd had gathered: officials, scientists, friends John had made during the past year. Dr. Bell embraced him tearfully. "Take detailed notes on everything," she instructed, "especially their biology. Their evolutionary path must be fascinating." Kathy hugged him next. "Try not to start any interstellar incidents," she joked, though her eyes were damp. "And remember, you're irreplaceable." Last came a surprising visitor, General Wright. The military man had been one of the strongest skeptics of the Zoraxian exchange. Yet here he was extending his hand. "I was wrong about them," he admitted gruffly. "And about you. You've handled this better than anyone could have expected. Good luck, Mason. Make us proud." John boarded the vessel with only a small bag containing personal items. The wooden falcon his grandfather had carved photos of Earth and its people, a collection of music and literature selected to represent human creativity. All else would be provided by his hosts. Ilara joined him at the entrance. "I will accompany you," she said, "as guide and translator. The journey begins." As the ship prepared for departure, John looked back at Earth, beautiful and blue against the blackness of space. He felt a rush of emotions: fear, excitement, sadness, hope, all mingled together into something new, something without a simple name. The vessel hummed beneath his feet. The walls shimmered with energy patterns. The journey of 16 light years was about to begin. "Ready?" Ilara asked. John took a deep breath, as "Ill ever be." The ship rose silently from the pad, accelerating with such smoothness that John barely felt the movement. Earth receded beneath them, growing smaller by the second. Soon it was just another blue dot among countless stars. "The true exchange begins now," Ilara said softly. "Not just between you and my world, but through you between our species. Whatever you experience, whatever you learn, becomes part of the bridge between worlds." John understood then the true nature of the gift it had never been Ilara given to him as the scientist's first thought. Nor had it been the technology or knowledge shared since first contact. The real gift was the connection itself, the bridge between different minds, different perspectives, different ways of being, the opportunity to grow beyond the limitations of a single viewpoint. As the ship engaged its main drive, preparing for the leap beyond the solar system, John felt not like he was leaving home, but like he was expanding the definition of home itself, to include not just Earth, but the vast universe beyond. Not just humanity, but all intelligent life. Whatever discoveries awaited, whatever challenges emerged, whatever wonders revealed themselves, the journey itself was the gift. "To new beginnings," he said. Ilara smiled, her nebula eyes reflecting starlight. "Always beginnings." She agreed. "The universe is made of them." The ship surged forward, carrying the first human ambassador beyond the bounds of his native system, toward a world no human had ever seen. The next chapter in the unexpected gift that had begun with a simple signal sent into the void. The universe listening to a curious species reaching outward, a connection formed, a bridge built, a future unfolding, one beginning at a time.